praise God that as their faithful protector, you never hesitated to sacrifice for those entrusted to you. May your example inspire us also to welcome, cherish, and safeguard God's most precious gift of life. Help us to faithfully commit ourselves to the service and defense of human life, especially where it is vulnerable or threatened. Obtain for us the grace to do the will of God in all things. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
So, introduction to our amazing speaker of the day. We have Dr. Stephen Burns. His life began when he was conceived in Japan, where his parents were living there while his dad served in the United States Navy. He was born in Dallas, Texas, so he's blessed to be a native Texan. He attended Catholic school in Dallas. Through high school, he attended LSU, where he played trombone in the band and marched in the Orange Bowl. After studying electrical engineering for several years, he graduated from UT Arlington with a biology degree, and then he attended UT Southwestern Medical School in Dallas. He began his family practice residency at the University of Kentucky in Lexington, serving as chief resident in his final year there. He moved back to Dallas and worked in a group practice for 4.5 years before opening a family practice in Paris in the year 1990. Since 2014, he has worked exclusively in geriatric medicine, caring for patients in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. At Our Lady of Victory, he has taught natural family planning classes, confirmation classes for high school students, and high school science at the parish's cooperative school. A longtime member of the choir, he serves as cantor for 9 a.m. Mass. He's pretty good at that, I will admit. He and his wife, Mary Beth, who is a registered nurse, have been married for 39 great years and have 2 children. Courtney is a health law attorney who works for Tarrant County at John Peter Smith Hospital in Fort Worth, Texas. Kevin is an assistant professor and chairman of the Department of Political Science at Christendom College in Virginia. So I think he has a very good resume, and I'm very proud to welcome Dr. Steve Burns.
All right, I'm Dr. Steve Burns. I called Sister Laura and asked her if I should wear a coat and tie, because they make you look more intelligent when you wear a coat and tie. She said, no, I didn't have to do that. So I came in my work clothes. This is what I wear every day. Do I look intelligent enough?
Yes.
Oh, that's good. I was kind of worried. There's a little uncertainty in the back. Okay, so why did Sister Laura ask me to do this? Well, I'm a scientist. She wanted one of the talks to be a scientific perspective. When does life begin? Well, most of what we're going to talk about today is what is life, okay? We're going to come up with a definition of life. Life is one of those kind of funny things where, for the most part, if I showed you something, you could tell me it was alive or not. But coming up with a definition of what makes things alive is a little harder than that, harder than you'd think. To get back to the scientific background, I have a bachelor's degree in biology. Biology literally means the study of life, okay? So this is what I do, okay? I was trained to study life. So that's why I'm giving you the talk today. I'm a biologist. I work with life. Okay, so what is life? Hopefully we can all agree that I'm alive, right?
Yes.
I'm alive. How do you know I'm alive?
Breathing.
Right. I'm breathing. I'm talking. Right. Walking around. But you could buy electronic toys at Walmart that walk and talk. So that's, while it is true that I'm alive, that's not enough of a definition. to prove that something's alive. And I'm breathing, I have a heartbeat, okay? But trees and plants are alive, right? Green plants, they're alive, they don't have hearts, they don't breathe. So that's not really necessary for life. For animal life, yes. For humans, definitely, okay? But for life in general, no, you don't have to have a heartbeat, you don't have to have a heart. Okay, so what we're going to do is try to come up with some idea of what constitutes life. So the first thing I'm going to look at is, I think we can all agree that those things are living, okay? Our president, he's a human being. We all agree he's alive, right? Okay? Whether you like him or not, he's alive. A tree. Generally, if it's green, you know it's alive, right? Sometimes it's hard to tell in the winter because most trees drop their leaves. But if it's got green leaves, you generally know it's alive. And that ugly looking thing at the bottom is a bacterium, okay? A bacterium is a single-celled organism. And scientists universally agree that bacteria are living, okay? So we're starting with, what does everybody agree is a living organism? And then we're going to try to find some common ground, okay? How can we say, what do these things all have in common that makes them living beings, okay? Got a question. How many of you have taken any kind of class in biology? Okay, okay. So, first thing we're going to do, that's a cell. Those of you who haven't had biology might not know much about what cells are, but that's a cell. There's a little dot towards the lower right that's the nucleus. A cell is a little blob of protoplasm, has proteins in it and stuff, has a cell membrane around it, and it's living and active. There's stuff going on in there. It's not just sitting there, there's chemical reactions going on there constantly, okay? A cell is the basic building block of life, okay? So, first thing, properties of life, it's cellular. Now, just to be clear, this doesn't mean that your smartphone is alive, okay, just because it's cellular. Okay? By cellular, I mean biological cells, okay? As far as we know, every living thing that has ever existed was built of cells, okay? If it doesn't have cells, it's not alive, okay? It's water-based. Every life form we have ever discovered depends on water. Whether it's bacteria, whether it's a plant, whether it's a fungus, a mushroom growing in the forest or something like that, it depends on water. It has to have water in the cell. If it doesn't have water, it's not alive. I don't know if you've ever noticed it much, but you know, when we send a rover to Mars, one of the things it does is look for evidence of water. They have experiments built onto that. And they're looking for evidence of water on other planets. Why? Because they want to see if there's any chance there could be life on another planet. No water, no life. Okay? So I said, you know, there's electronic toys that walk and talk. They're not cellular. They don't have cells in them. And they're not water-based. Water would probably be harmful to those things, okay? All right, so what else? They also have metabolism. So what is metabolism? That's kind of hard to define too. It means they have stuff going on all the time. They have to take in food for energy, for nutrients. They give off waste products. Okay? They make proteins. Proteins are another universal component of life. They make proteins, and proteins do essentially all of the work in a cell, okay? You need proteins. Proteins give the cell its structure. Proteins do the work. They do the chemical reactions, everything, okay? Proteins are marvelous little critters, okay? They do lots of important stuff. All life forms are able to reproduce. I'm going to put an asterisk by that because there's a little bit of qualification to that. Just think of it. If there was a life form that couldn't reproduce, after a while they'd all die, they'd be extinct, right? So life has to reproduce to continue in existence, for that species to continue in existence. So the reason I put that asterisk there is that there's some qualifications to that. My wife and I are no longer capable of reproducing because of our age. Okay? Does that mean we're dead? Okay, give you a clue. We're not dead yet. Okay? So, being able to reproduce is more of a characteristic of the species as a whole. Okay? They are able to reproduce. There are some people or animals that have birth defects that they can't reproduce. Does that mean they're dead? No. Because they have usually everything it takes, but something doesn't work right. Okay? So, reproduction in general. All right, I'm going to put one more down here. All life has a genetic code. What's a genetic code?
DNA that makes up your body.
DNA. DNA is another fascinating thing. A lot like proteins, your DNA has all the instructions for how your cell will work. It has the instructions of how to make all those proteins that are made in cells. The instructions are in the DNA. DNA has all the instructions on how to reproduce, how to make another cell. Okay? All life forms we have ever discovered have DNA. So, there's always a possibility that we might discover something in the future that doesn't quite fit all these. But the best we can tell, these are the qualifications for life. If you don't have these, you're not alive. Okay? So, let's talk about human development. That's a picture of a newly conceived human zygote. Zygote means a newly conceived, newly fertilized embryo. Okay? Sorry, I'm a scientist. I have to use these words. Okay? That is a human zygote. That unfortunate little critter was a test tube baby. I don't know if it survived or not. Okay? But that's how we all started. That's what I looked like 68 and a half years ago. Okay? You probably don't recognize it because now I have gray hair, but that's what I look like. Okay? Is it cellular? Yeah, it is a cell. Is it water-based? Well, I can tell you it is. In fact, it's floating in water, and it has water inside it. Metabolism? Well, you can't tell it, but yes, it's doing stuff. It's absorbing nutrients. In the case of an individual cell, it doesn't have a mouth. It doesn't swallow nutrients. It just absorbs them through the cell wall. Cell membrane, excuse me. But it's making proteins, and the proteins are doing work in there. Okay? So it has a metabolism. Reproduction? Yeah. It's about to start dividing into multiple cells. So it's not forming another human yet, but it's going to start dividing into multiple cells. You think something is dead and divide into multiple cells? No. Never heard of it. Does it have genetic code? Yeah, it does. It has DNA in it. You can't see it, it's too small. But it meets all the qualifications for life, right? So why is there a question of whether it's alive or not? Probably because if the person who doesn't know isn't a scientist, if they don't know when life begins, they don't know what life is. Okay? It's as simple as that. If they knew what life was, it wouldn't be an issue. Okay? All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about development. We all start right there, one cell. Your body now has billions and billions of cells. They all started as one cell. Okay? Sorry, you can't tell a whole lot on the slide, but this is 2 weeks. Okay? In the 2 weeks that have passed, a lot has changed. Okay? Now you're kind of long and skinny. You probably can tell this, but the top is the head. This little spot right there, that's an eye. Probably not sensitive to light yet, but that's where the eye is forming. Looky there, it has a spinal cord. This is 2 weeks from conception. In most cases, your mother doesn't even know she's pregnant yet at 2 weeks. This is the time when she'll miss her first period. Okay, it's due to come right now, and if she misses it, she'll be thinking, oh, I might be pregnant. So you've got this at 2 weeks, and the mother didn't even know she was pregnant. Is this a blob of tissue? Doesn't look like a blob of tissue to me. I guess you can call me a blob of tissue. I'm just a blob of tissue. But this is organized, okay? It's got a head end and a tail end, okay? It's got a spinal cord. It's developing an eye. It's organized. That's not just some random blob. So when people talk about it's just a blob of tissue, no way. Okay, we'll start getting more like a human being shortly. I think it's just a plastic model, but that's 4 weeks. Okay? So the head's up there. You can see where the eye is. I think that's where the ear is forming right there. This looks like it's where an arm is forming. That's where the heart's going to be. Okay? You can't see any arms or legs yet. And you can see the spine right there, spinal cord. This is 4 weeks. Okay? 1 month. 6-week baby. You can tell that's an eye now, right? That's where an arm is starting to form. All it is a little button right now. Doesn't look like anything. That's a leg. Okay? That's 8 weeks. Looks more like a human now, okay? It's got fingers and toes, right? Okay? Looks more like a baby. At 8 weeks, at this stage, all the internal organs have formed. It has a brain, it has eyes, has a stomach, has intestines, has a heart and lungs, has kidneys. Everything it needs. It has a pancreas, bladder. Everything a human being needs is already in there. It's still going to develop and grow, but it's there already. And it's perfectly legal to kill that. Okay? That little blob of tissue there. Okay, this is actually just my last picture. That's 12 weeks. 3 months. The woman's been pregnant 3 months, and it looks like a baby, right? And some people don't know when life begins. Doesn't make much sense, does it? But like I said, if somebody tells you they don't know when life begins, what that tells you is they don't know what life is. Okay? If they say life begins with a heartbeat, well, it was growing, metabolizing, it had DNA, cells were multiplying, but it wasn't alive. That really doesn't make any sense. From a scientific perspective, okay, you don't have to be a Catholic or a Christian to believe this. That's alive. Okay? There's no question. Oh, one thing I didn't mention. Let me go back 5 or 6 weeks. At about this stage, you can, on an ultrasound, they can start to see the heart muscles contracting. Okay? They're actually not pumping anything. They're just starting to squeeze. The blood vessels haven't all formed, so there's nothing to really pump around, but they're there. So, it's alive, right? There's no question, it's alive. As far as we know from science, every cell on the earth, remember, a cell is the basic building block of life, every cell came from another cell. Okay? So, back to me at my first hour of existence. That's when I became me, okay? So where did that living cell come from? I just said every living cell came from another cell. Okay? My living mother made a living egg. My living father made a living sperm cell. Those two joined to make that. There's no point in there when life was not present, okay? My parents were alive, they made living cells, they combined to make me, a living zygote, and grew up to look like this. So, when somebody asks, when does life begin? One correct answer is to say, well, it doesn't. Life doesn't begin, it's continuous. We can't point back to any point and say, that organism was not alive, and now it is alive. It's never happened. We have never seen that something not alive became alive. Every living cell came from another living cell. There's no point in there when life was not present. Now, this is a little bit off topic, but you might wonder, well, where did the first living cell come from? Science doesn't know the answer to that, okay? When scientists look at fossils nowadays, they use a microscope in addition to just looking at the big picture to look for microscopic evidence of life forms. And the current answer is the earliest living cells popped up about 1 billion years ago. You know, it's kind of hard to do research on something that happened 1 billion years ago. There weren't newspapers, there's no movies, there's no pictures. You don't have a whole lot to go on. All we have is a fossil specimen that says it looks like there was a living cell there. So, for the last 1 billion years, we can't point to any time when life was not present. Okay? You're alive because you came from living parents. There's no point when you weren't alive and became alive. There's a point when you weren't you. Like, that's when my life began, but there was life before that. Okay? Life doesn't begin, life is continuous. How did that first cell come about 1 billion years ago? We don't have any idea. Okay? We just don't know. There actually are scientists trying to do experiments to reproduce the conditions in the water and the atmosphere that we think existed 1 billion years ago, and trying to see if they can make things coalesce to form a living cell. We're nowhere near. We don't know how to do it. How do you make a cell membrane form and all the proteins inside and all the DNA? Where's that come from? We don't know. From a Catholic perspective, it's easy. God made us, you know. But from a scientific point of view, we simply don't know. We don't have a clue. So, with regard to when does life begin? Life is continuous. My life began right there, okay? 68 and a half years ago. That's living. There's no definition of life that doesn't include that. I've actually looked at some stuff online, look up definition of life. And you'll see minor variations on that theme there of what it takes to be alive. But basically, I've never found a definition of life that says that wasn't alive, a scientific definition. Some people who claim that it's not human or not alive are trying to argue more from a philosophical point of view, not science. Okay? Well, I'm a scientist, I'm not a philosopher. I can't help you with that. Okay? But one other thing, we talked about blobs of tissue. I didn't see any blobs of tissue on there, okay? what about human? Some people say, well, it's not really human. Well, from a scientific point of view, human simply means it's a member of the human species. Homo sapiens, okay? We're all humans. That's human, okay? It's a member of the human species. It has the human DNA. It can't develop into a shark or a squirrel or a tree. It's not possible, okay? That's human because it has human DNA. It's a member of our species. That makes it human. That's all we mean. Some philosophers will try to argue that you're not really human until you can experience life and enjoy and appreciate things. Well, that's a philosophical answer. I'm a scientist. That's a lie, okay? That's human life. Sort of as a side issue, you know, one of the way abortion clinics make money is they sell baby parts to research labs. They want to do research on baby parts, embryonic stem cells, stuff like that. When the research lab buys that, they want to know that is a human embryonic stem cell. They specify that. They don't want just any old embryonic stem cell. They want a human stem cell. And so even the people who approve of abortion agree it's human. Otherwise, nobody would want to do research on it. Okay? Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the other end of the spectrum. I was trained in family practice, and I have delivered babies. Not in 40 years, but I've delivered babies. But now I only take care of old people. That makes sense, right? Old doctor, take care of old people. Geriatric doctor, geriatric patients. So what about when does life end? Usually it's pretty straightforward. You know when they're dead, okay? There are some issues that make it difficult, okay? You know, I told you that it's not fair to use a heartbeat and breathing as a definition of life, okay? Because there's a lot of things that don't have that. Well, if one of the nurses tells me, I think Mr. Jones has died in room 100, what do? I go listen for a heartbeat and breathing. Because while that's not an absolute criterion for life, their heart has to beat to pump nutrients and oxygen to their body, okay? So even when they're dead, they're still made up of cells. They're still water-based, but without oxygen and nutrients, their metabolism is gone, okay? So when I go and examine a patient, if they have no heartbeat and no lungs, I know that they're going to be dead in a matter of minutes, okay? Because you can't live that long. They still have genetic material, okay? Let me ask you another question. If my heart were to stop beating right now, stop breathing, fell flat on the floor, would I be dead? It's a trick question. Don't answer it. The answer is not yet. Close, but not yet, okay? I'll die soon if somebody doesn't save me, okay? But you know, people do CPR. They pump oxygen into your lungs and do CPR to pump the blood, okay? So when my heart stops beating and I stop breathing, I'm not dead yet. But if nothing happens, I will be soon, okay? Because I need that. Human beings, because of the complexity of our bodies, you know, that individual cell, it absorbs nutrients through the cell membrane. Well, we're so large and complicated, we have to have the oxygen pumped through our blood. We can't just absorb it through our skin, okay? And then there's other issues like, if somebody is brain dead, are they really dead? If they have no brain activity, in other words, they've injected dye in, there is no blood flow above the neck, there's no brain activity, are they still alive? Well, yeah, they are. They're still cell-based, they're still water-based, there's still metabolism going on in most of the body, okay? Not in the head. They were capable of reproduction at some point in their lives, and they still have all their DNA, okay? So when somebody's brain dead, they're not actually totally dead. So why does that make a difference? The only reason we even debate this is for organ transplants, okay? Because if I'm in an auto accident and I smash my head up, but the rest of me works okay, they want to use my heart and my kidneys and my pancreas and my liver for transplantation, okay? So if they could pronounce me dead, it's okay to do that. You're not supposed to take stuff out of living people, right? You don't take a heart out of a living person. So it's fairly generally accepted now that it's okay to call somebody dead when they're brain dead. And even Pope John Paul said that seems to fit. And the reason is, if your brain is dead, do you still have a soul? Well, we don't know the answer to that. But if your brain is dead, you're not going to come back. Okay? The brain does not come back. When it's gone, it's gone. So there's actually some debate still in the religious community. If somebody is brain dead, can you take their organs? Most people, Catholic, even ethicists, will say, yeah, that's okay. Because they're essentially dead. In all honesty, most people, if they're brain dead, the rest of their body dies quickly anyhow. There are occasional exceptions to that with people on ventilators and things like that. But when somebody's brain dead, they're not truly dead. They're almost dead. A very important part of their body is dead, but they're not dead yet. But it still might be totally ethical to use their organs. Okay? Even the Pope said so. Yes?
Can you distinguish between brain dead and long-term deep comas? Terry Schiavo type things.
Yes, yes. Terry Schiavo was not brain dead.
Right.
She was never brain dead. Well, not until they killed her. As a general rule, you can. They'll do several things. One is they'll do an EEG, a brainwave test. Most people in a coma, you'll see some little waves. If the brain is totally dead, it's flat. Okay? There are no brain waves. There are some exceptions to that. People who take an overdose of phenobarbital, barbiturates, their EEG is flat. But if you give them time to recover, it comes back. Okay? They're not really dead. So sometimes there are issues there. Okay? A neurologist will generally do an exam at the bedside to see if you have any reflexes, including things like touch your eyelid, see if you blink. Because you probably can't avoid blinking when somebody touches your eyelid. You're going to touch your eyelashes. You're going to blink. Okay, that's natural. It's a natural protective mechanism. So there are ways to tell, and the absolute way to tell, which in all honesty they don't usually use, is an arteriogram. Do you have blood flow going into your head? If there's no blood flow, the brain's dead. No questions about it. Most neurologists would argue you don't really need that to make that determination. I'm not a neurologist. Okay. Any other questions? You know about life now. If anybody tells you they don't know when life begins, you know they don't know what they're talking about. Okay? There are no blobs of tissue. The tissue is organized. It's symmetrical. And it's working. Okay? You have metabolic stuff going on. They're using energy. The cells are reproducing and differentiating into brain cells and eye cells and heart cells. And that's dead? No. We have never seen anything dead that does that. Okay? And as far as I'm concerned, it's human. Because like I said, from a biologist's point of view, human means you belong to our species, human species. It doesn't mean any philosophical thing about appreciation of life or experience or anything like that. It just means you're a member of the species, okay? I have some patients in the nursing home who don't have any appreciation of life. They're so badly demented with Alzheimer's, they don't know where they are or who they are. Does that mean they're dead? No, of course not. Their heart's beating, they're still breathing. We still feed them, okay? They're not dead. So the idea of appreciation of life isn't really a very good definition. It's what some philosophers will argue because they want to say they're dead, okay? They're using their conclusion to base their argument, okay? But that's not a biological argument. Any other questions? Yes?
All right, you were talking about reproduction,
Mm-hmm.
as, you know, be able to produce another of the species.
Mhm.
But wouldn't the reproduction of individual cells through mitosis count as reproduction as a form of life? Or is it
Yes,
just
absolutely,
meiosis?
absolutely. And I started to put that in there, that reproduction can just be cellular reproduction. Because I said, you know, my wife and I are no longer able to produce children because of our age. I still have bone marrow cells that are reproducing, making new blood cells, because blood cells don't last a long time. So my body is still reproducing cells, making new cells. And that ugly bacteria I had up there a little while ago, that's just a single cell organism. That's the only reproduction it has. Okay? It's just splitting from one cell into two cells. That's how bacteria reproduce. They just split down the middle. You had one, now you have two. So yes, absolutely. Cellular reproduction is reproduction in life. Okay? Anybody else?
Yeah, question over here.
Yes?
What's the major difference between a coma and being brain dead? Like, is there like a
Okay.
big difference, or is it
Yeah.
very similar?
They can be pretty similar, okay? A coma basically means you're unconscious. You don't respond. People come tap on you. Sometimes we do what's called a sternal rub. If you ever want to irritate one of your friends and they're taking a nap, take your knuckles and rub it on their breastbone hard, okay? And they're going to respond, okay? So we do that sometimes if we want to find out if somebody, you know, we tap them on the shoulder and they don't wake up. Occasionally I have to do that. And if they're capable of responding, they're going to do it, okay? Because that hurts, okay? People in a coma don't have any kind of sleep-wake cycles. They're just out. They don't talk. You have to feed them with some sort of tube, a tube through the nose or a tube through the stomach, because they won't chew and swallow food. But there's still brain activity, okay? So if you did an EEG or a brainwave test, you'd see some brain activity. It might not be normal, but there'd be activity there. Somebody who's brain dead, it's flat. There's nothing. The EEG measures electrical activity in the brain. You can see, even with probes right on the skull, on the scalp, you can see electrical activity from the brain. So brain dead means the brain is dead. There is no life above the neck, okay, in the brain. Coma means you still have living stuff in there, but for some reason you're very much unresponsive. It's obviously messed up, okay? It's not working normally. Get back to Terry Schiavo. There was a newspaper article after she died. They did an autopsy. I'm not sure why, but they said it showed that large parts of her brain were dead. There was nothing there, and that proved she was brain dead. No, it doesn't. Because there was still living stuff in between. I mean, obviously the reporter didn't know what he was talking about, okay? But brain dead means there's nothing alive up here, okay, in your brain. No cells left. And one thing is, the thing that makes you keep breathing is at the base of the brain. There's cells in there that make you keep breathing. If they're breathing on their own, without a ventilator machine making them breathe, they're not brain dead. Terry Schiavo was not on a machine. She was breathing on her own. She was never brain dead.
Excuse me, can you explain to them who was her?
Oh, Terry Schiavo?
Because I remember, but.
Yeah, y'all are too young to know about Terry Schiavo. She was a woman who had some unfortunate accident and was badly brain damaged. They had to feed her out. She had a tube. She had a feeding tube. But she was breathing. She could actually follow people with her eyes. You know, you could walk around the room and she could follow you. Brain dead people don't do that. Okay? It was a big court issue because her husband who was living with another woman and having children with another woman, said that, oh, she wouldn't want to live like this, we should stop her feeding. Is that the right guy you want to ask? Legally, he was married to her, and that's basically what one is. Legally, he had custody of her since she couldn't answer questions. But there was a really big issue because he wanted to stop the feedings and let the rest of her body die. She was not brain dead. Okay? She had a feeding tube. All he had to do was pour food in it. Okay? He wanted to stop it. And there were big court battles over this. Eventually he won. They stopped feeding her and she died. Okay? The Vatican released a statement that said, that's like being executed without a crime. But strangely enough, you'll see that happening more and more nowadays. Somebody whose relative has advanced dementia, you have a feeding tube in, they want to stop the feedings. I won't do that. If they're my patient, I say, oh, no, we're not going to stop the feedings. I had a patient who was, I think she had a really bad stroke, and she already had a feeding tube in. She had a feeding tube in because of dementia, Alzheimer's. And the family wanted to admit her to hospice, which was okay. I mean, we really didn't expect her to live very long. And they said, we're going to stop the tube feedings. I'd say, no. We can put her on hospice, but we're not going to stop her feedings. You know, they've already got the tube in place. It's not like we have to do another surgical procedure. Is it that much of a burden to pour food in the tube? Why are we going to starve her to death? She died pretty quick on her own. But you're going to see that nowadays. Let's just stop the feeding. I see it. I've had patient families fire me because I wouldn't stop the feeding. Put them in the care of another doctor who did, and they died. Doesn't happen a lot, but occasionally.
This week we had one whose family turned off her pacemaker.
Mm-hmm.
Just turned it off.
She's still alive, by the way.
Still alive, but they decided she was too demented. And that was done in the hospital before she came back.
Yeah. So, anyhow, that's life, okay? You've got my definition of life. If you look online, you'll get definitions that are very similar to that. Most of them have more lines to them, okay? That's my simplified version of it, okay? But that's what life is. So you can't say that a human single-celled zygote is not alive. It meets all the criteria. It doesn't look like a grown-up human. It doesn't look like you and me, but it's alive. There's no question. If you ask a scientist, there is no question. Okay? That's it.
Thank you, Doctor. We got my gift from
Thank you.
And it's good if we.
Okay.